Hi everyone, this is Riders on the Storm, and today we'll be talking about the power of verbs. We'll show you how to use verbs to make your sentences more effective and impactful. Let's get started. First of all, what are verbs? Verbs are words that describe an action, state, or occurrence. Some examples include walked, remembers, will destroy, have been eaten. Verbs tell readers what the subject of your sentence is doing, and you can think of verbs as the lifeblood of your writing, because every sentence needs one, and verbs move things forward. But let's get more technical. How do we use verbs to our advantage? So, a good verb can turn a boring sentence into an interesting sentence, and it all boils down to the difference between a weak verb versus a strong verb. Weak verbs are verbs that do very little work in your sentences. Weak verbs tend to be vague or overused, and they also require additional explanation, so that means that you'll have to add extra words into your sentences just to make up for that weak verb. Some examples of weak verbs include to be, to do, or to have. Strong verbs, on the other hand, are verbs that get your ideas across well. Strong verbs tend to be action-oriented and precise. They help to declutter your sentences because they are so efficient at getting meaning across. And there are many types of strong verbs. They come in all shapes and sizes. So why don't we look at some examples of weak versus strong verbs? First, I will read a sentence with a weak verb. Then I will replace that verb with a strong verb so you can see the difference. So for our first example, the CDC was in charge of the campaign versus the CDC oversaw the campaign. Here, by changing was to oversaw, we are able to get rid of the words in charge because the verb oversaw has the meaning of in charge built into its definition. This is an example of how strong verbs can make your sentences more efficient. The researchers did a study on plant life versus the researchers conducted a study on plant life. In this example, conducted has a similar meaning to did, so we didn't get rid of any extra words. However, when you're writing for college, some verbs have a better fit and connotation. Conducted has a more scientific and rigorous feel to it, and it fits quite well when our subject is researchers. So this is an example of how strong verbs can add life and vitality to your sentences. Let's look at another comparison. Bell Hooks says that race and gender are interconnected versus Bell Hooks argues that race and gender are interconnected. Here, by changing says to argues, we are strengthening the action of bell hooks and making it more clear what she's doing. She's not just simply stating a random piece of information, she is putting forth something she really believes in. That's the difference between says and argues. Let's look at one last example. In the movie Get Out, horror is used to show the trauma of racism versus in the movie Get Out, horror is weaponized to illustrate the trauma of racism. So in this example, I wanted to show you how unique and varied strong verbs can be. Weaponized may not be the first verb you think of when you're writing a film analysis, but it works because it takes the weak verb of is used to show, and it gets rid of unnecessary words while simultaneously energizing the sentence. Once you start using more strong verbs, it can be quite fun actually to see what kind of unique verbs you can include in your writing. So hopefully you've gotten a better understanding of how strong verbs work. I'll show you some more examples, but I won't be reading them out loud. You can pause the screen if you want to read them to yourself. So, if you want to know how to start using strong verbs, we have a couple suggestions for you. First of all, change the way you think about writing. Avoid to be, to do, and to have verbs. Instead, visualize the action that's happening in your ideas and sentences and use a verb that matches that action. Secondly, you can search for more information about strong verbs, whether it's examples or a more in-depth guide. You can use Google or the links that we have found in the description below. Another helpful tool is using a thesaurus to replace the weaker verbs in your sentences with better synonyms. Once you follow these steps, you should be well on your way to incorporating strong verbs into your writing. On a final note, strong verbs are not always better 100% of the time, so be open-minded and see what works. Weak verbs can still be useful and important because you don't always want to bring attention to your sentences. But remember, if you feel you're missing a sense of energy and punch to your sentences, try using the power of verbs. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Riders on the storm.